Let me introduce to you the discipline of permaculture design. It's a design modality that tries to mimic natural systems, the complexity and the resourcefulness and efficiency of natural systems. Often land-based cultures, like indigenous cultures and other people that have lived on the land for a long time and haven't had access to many outside resources, they develop a very efficient, localized, sustainable design. And if we look at indigenous cultures, then we get a lot of ideas for how we can incorporate some of those methods and techniques into our current designs for human dwellings and small farming systems that are more sustainable and more ecological. The first thing you do in permaculture design is spend a lot of time on your piece of land. Observe everything that's happening and experience the landscape in a wide variety of conditions, meaning morning, noon, night. Look at it during rain events, wind events, sun events. Watch the shade and the sun move throughout the site throughout the day. See that site in different seasons. Watch for wildlife patterns, water movement, erosion, all kinds of things. You really want to see what's already happening there and try to work with the flows of energy that are happening. Instead of most design systems just ask the client or the people that own the property, they just think about what do we want here. They're not thinking about what is appropriate for the ecology of that site and for what's already going on. And sometimes it works if people decide what they want is fairly sustainable, but a lot of times it's not, and it will take more effort, more wear and tear on the home. You might have flooding, you might have erosion, perhaps increased fire risk. In the long term, we're talking 100, 200 years, if you don't work with the natural energy flows on the site, that dwelling or farm system will not be sustainable. Permaculture design tries to work with nature, integrate human needs for food and dwellings with the natural ecosystem, and that starts with the observation, working with the topography, the hydrology, the macro and microclimates on site, the soil conditions, and any kind of natural flows and patterning that are there. The big overarching ethics that guide permaculture are these three: earth care, people care, and fair share. So if every designer, when designing a suburb or a home or a business building or a city or even an object like a toy or technology, if they thought about these three things and said, are we taking care of the earth, meaning taking care of the non-human world and the non-human infrastructure in the design of this item? That's something to ask themselves and try to take care of the earth. Meaning, like if someone was designing a new toy, are they using products that can be recycled and go back into the earth, into the soil, into the metabolism of nutrients for plants and animals? Or are they making something that's never going to biodegrade and will end up in the ocean or in a landfill? That's earth care, an example of it. People care, meaning are you nurturing and supporting human health and vitality by this design? Again, something designers don't think about, especially in our Western capitalistic market. We're thinking about what can sell, what's gimmicky and new and fun and interesting. And all those things are good, but they're not going to be very sustainable if they don't really support human well-being as well. So people care, earth care, and then fair share. This is where it gets a little bit radical, I'd say. If you're running for political office and one of your, part of your platform was, we care about the environment, great, earth care. People can say like, yeah, okay, that's good. I care about people and their well-being. Every human's going to vote for that, saying, yeah, we agree with that. But if you say, I want to give back the surplus and extra to the people that don't have as much. I want to propose a new law that says any excess in funds go to the poor people. Any excess in food and resources, it all goes to the poor people automatically, or the people that don't have as much of whatever it is they need. That gets a little bit politically sticky. People have a harder time doing that, and it's not because people I'm getting philosophical here, but I don't think, my opinion is, it's not because people aren't generous and don't care about each other. It's because our system is pushing us to hoard things. And hoarding's not so horrible. And this permaculture is not trying to point a finger at who's bad and who's designing things wrong. It's saying that the way we design things currently, the majority of conventional designs, be that a garden design, a farm design, a home design, whatever it is, it's not in sync with the laws of ecology. They're not in sync with nature and the way things work. So they're going to be inefficient and take a lot of effort to upkeep. So they're not sustainable. And the same thing would be with fair share. It's not saying people are bad because they're not sharing all their profits with the poor. It's saying that that won't work very long as a human society or culture if we continue to hoard things and not let the excess be distributed to those that need it more. That's about really just like source and sink ecology, where there's abundance of something, it needs to be distributed to those areas that have less of it. It could be a nutrient, areas in the soil that have less nitrogen. If that excess nitrogen is somewhere, and it could be distributed to the areas that have less. So that's fair share, redistributing the surplus in whatever that surplus is, goods, nutrients, water, whatever it is. In ecosystems, the surplus tends to be disseminated to the areas that don't have enough. And that's just how our Earth ecosystems and biosphere work. So when you design things that aren't in line with that, they're not going to work as well. So those are the three permaculture ethics, trying to guide design more towards things that are more sustainable and will last longer because they mimic natural ecosystems. Permaculture is also guided by design principles. Here are 7 of them. Practice conservation. So conserve wherever possible in your design, conserving water, resources, time, labor, valuing diversity and edges. Ecological edges are a place where there's higher diversity. And an ecological edge is the transition zone between two different types of ecosystems. Let's say ocean and land. Right along the shore there is a much higher biodiverse area than it is on the land or in the deeper ocean. Right along that transition zone is where you have some species from both ecosystems living. And it tends to be a more fertile area, a lot more nutrient rich. So in our designs, when we're thinking about growing food or raising food for humans, we can take that ecological principle of high diversity and fertility and high productivity of edges and create edges that can support our produce and get us more production. And diversity, of course, is something known in ecology, in general, not always, but in general, more species diverse areas are stronger. They're more resilient to disturbances. And that's true, I would say, also of cultural diversity, language diversity, socioeconomic diversity. The more different ways humans have of living and viewing things, the more resilient and strong that community of people are to change. That means someone in that community will know or have an idea of how to deal with this disturbance. And the word disturbance comes from ecology. When we think of think about our wildfires around here. That's a big disturbance. You have the chaparral here in the front country. You get a fire comes through, it burns everything. But there's some species, and a lot of them have stored a lot of their energy underground, so they are adapted to fire. They can respond and grow back. Some of the species cannot, and they die out. But if you have a diverse enough population and community, then you will have a diverse and resilient community to kind of big disturbances or dramatic events. Same thing I would say with human societies and cultures and groups of people. The more diversity, the more resilience. So we can use that in our permaculture designs by building in diversity. Don't just make one thing, like say you have a small farm. You wouldn't want to just have your water system is just rainwater catchment off your roof, and that's all your water. No, you want a diverse grouping. You want a whole bunch of different types of ways of gathering and utilizing water on your site. You might have a small a rainwater catchment off your roof. You might have municipal water that you can use too. You might have a pond that catches runoff, and you might have a water tank or a cistern. You have, so in other words, a number of different ways that you use and conserve water. You could add gray water into that too. So that's value diversity to edges. Reciprocity is in your design, you put elements in that design next to each other that give and take to each other. They help each other out. For example, you might want the chicken coop that you have, if you decide to have chickens as an animal for produce, next to the compost bin, because the manure, the chicken manure, can go right into the compost. So don't have those spatially separated. Have them close together because they're reciprocal. They can give and take. One feeds the other. And you might want to plant some plants around the compost pile that can utilize the nutrients of the compost pile that seep into the ground. Many functions for each element. Each element in your permaculture design should serve more than one function. Just like imagine a tree in a forest. Does it just do one thing, grow leaves and wood? No. It sequesters carbon, it provides habitat for insects and for birds and for other animals. It produces food for larger mammals. It helps the soil food web. It produces fuel, it produces oxygen, has many functions. So when you're thinking of designing, we don't think in terms like that too often. Designers usually think, oh, let's just put, a fountain here because it's pretty, and a lawn over here because that's pretty, and we'll build a little gazebo here to sit in. But you could have the gazebo have water catchment off the roof, and you can sit in it, and maybe some of the walls of the gazebo are like hydroponics, so that it grows food and catches water and is a nice place to sit. That's multiple functions for one element. And your fountain could be a place where you also raise fish or snails for ducks, or lots of different ideas. You can get really creative with thinking of multiple functions for each element. Many elements for each function. That kind of goes back to diversity too. Back to my water example, if you're going to have the function of water conservation and catchment, have lots of different elements that do that same function. It's kind of like, it's how it is in nature. There's backup plans. If one thing can't do it, another one will. Catching and storing energy as much as possible on site. Types of energy that come to your site, if we're thinking of a piece of land, are wind energy, solar energy is the big one, water, soil, also nutrients might flow in and out of your site, movement of animals in and out, pollinators, birds. Those are all energy sources that you want to, as they come through your site, have them stop and store or contribute to the energy of the site rather than have them move through. And again, I go back to like a water example. Most of our dwellings in regular conventional life here are meant to take water away from the buildings, get it away, get it down a drain, out to the creek, out to the ocean, away from our buildings, because it will, if we have flooding, that'll cause problems. And flooding can cause problems, but if we design the system so water gets stopped on our site, catch it, store it, let it sink into the soil and hydrate the plants in a way that doesn't damage the buildings, that's going to be the best thing to do. And appropriate scale is another one. Building and designing things so it's in sync and in scale with the natural system, not too out of scale. And another one that guides permaculture design to keep it sustainable and efficient. This is a picture of a banana circle. A banana circle is a circular, it's like a hole dug about 2 meters wide, about 1.5 meters deep, and the soil from that hole is put up and made into a berm around the edge of that hole, and then banana plants are planted in the berm. Mulch is put down to cover the soil to make sure erosion doesn't happen, and green waste is put into the center there. So that's an example of a banana circle. It's a tropical a permacultural idea that comes from indigenous knowledge, and I've used and made some of these in Guatemala, where I lived for about a year and made a small permaculture garden there. It's an example of reciprocity, meaning this element, the banana circle, it's a design element, has a place where bananas can grow, and their roots go down into the soil where you have all that green waste decomposing in the center, so they're getting nutrients from that situation where they're growing. Water is also flowing into the center of that banana circle. You can't quite tell, but on the upper hill, this is on a hill, on the upper slope of that banana circle, there's a little notch in the berm around the banana circle. So water can flow down the hill in the upper part of the image, flows down through that notch into the center, into the hole. So these banana plants are getting water there too. So the banana circle is able to feed the bananas with water and nutrients from the green waste in the center and the water flowing in. And the bananas produce fruit, but they also produce leaves that die, and those can go right back into the center to refeed themselves. There's more than one function for this banana circle element. It's producing food. It's also capturing and storing water and nutrients. And it's also a place for composting to happen too. So it's conservation, it's catching and storing energy in the water and the nutrients, and food production. A local example of this, so this is one picture from Guatemala, and you can do these banana circles in our temperate climate too, like here in Santa Barbara, and you might try something other than, you can still do bananas, but in this picture we got some medicinal plants and sweet potatoes growing in the center, and you could do that here. You might want to switch out some of the tropical plants for more temperate plants like cannas you could grow in a circle too, and those have edible rhizomes as well.